cause mass hysteria. You know how, well, last time I was here, I talked about the world according to Baby Jude. Was that last time?
Yes, yes.
Baby Jude is approximately sleeping through the night. And his first night doing that was Father's Day, which was very sweet and considerate of him. And, I know I talked about it last time I was here, is that a part of the goal probably any mother and father have is to make their baby feel so secure that they don't even ask if they're secure. It's just innate in them. They just know they're safe and know they're loved and know they're cared for. To be taken for granted, I guess, in other words, for parents to be taken for granted and presumed to be there may be the highest compliment the parents can achieve. Do you follow what I'm saying? Yes. And, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a Mother's Day or a Father's Day in which you take a minute to appreciate the fact that, yes, Mom and Dad, I've taken you for granted for all these years, and thank you for being able to take you for granted. And for that reason, America is very good at, it's a turbulent and crazy place sometimes, but or maybe every day. But it also is a very easy place to take for granted. And that's why I think that on a day a year, it's not such a bad thing to, and for some, for politicians, for media, maybe it's a little lip service, it's a little pandering, it's an advertising, it's a sale, whatever it is. But on an individual basis, personally speaking, it's a nice opportunity to not take this amazing country for granted. Even if, like I say, even 364 days a year, it wants us to take it for granted. It wants us to speak freely and choose, as we'll talk about today, without constantly kowtowing to it or congratulating or thanking America. It just wants us to be. But maybe one day a year to appreciate it consciously is a nice thing. So, happy July 4th. Tomorrow's my birthday, and in 3 days, America catches up with me. When we had Jude, this is not the world according to Jude, but when we had Jude, the very first day in the hospital, he wanted to be free. He's a feisty little kid. The doctor called him opinionated. And he actually pushed up with his legs. Something was kicking like crazy while Melina was pregnant, and then when we had the baby, we realized what was happening, and that was that he was doing this, the whole time. And he still does that. If I put him in the crib and he does not want to be asleep, he does this. He lets us know he does not want to be there. And even when he was 1 day old, he would push up with his legs. Holding him was nice, but he would wriggle so that he could extend his legs and push. And it really felt like he was, like on the tiniest level, on a 1 day old level, it was a freedom that he was demanding. And so as I started thinking about freedom today, I started noticing, maybe in a way for me for the first time, how pervasive the yearning for freedom is in some of the great human stories. Not all of them, some of them are about other things, but a lot of the great human stories, a lot of the people we revere, a lot of the historical epics are about freedom. So the list I made is absurdly long. I'll just give you some of them. Moses, his story is about freeing his people from slavery. Jesus, his story is about freeing humanity in some sense from suffering, some would say, or in some sense freeing people from the rigors of law and allowing them to feel the love instead of the law, something along those lines, a lot of different interpretations. Susan B. Anthony, Rosa Parks, Dr. King, freedom from racial discrimination, freedom from gender discrimination. I have a quote from Dr. King: freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. A woman named I'm going to butcher her name, Aung San Suu Kyi. Some of you have heard of her. She's been in the news recently. In 1991, she won the Nobel Prize for being the voice and the conscience of freedom for the people of Burma. And she was imprisoned, basically, for 20 years. under various pretenses and with various levels of treatment, we can only imagine, by the ruling military junta in Myanmar, Burma. Only this year, just this last month, she became a member of parliament in Burma and traveled to Norway, I believe it is, right, to receive her Nobel Peace Prize that she received 21 years ago. Harriet Tubman, Abraham Lincoln, their story was freedom from slavery. A quote from Abraham Lincoln, "In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth," in protecting freedom. Jonas Salk, scientist, right? Freedom from polio, freedom from the fear of a disease that had crippled millions and millions. The number of cases in polio dropped from millions to nearly zero, right? That freedom from that fear. And my baby has gone through, the most ridiculous number of vaccines, but I'm aware each one of them is a miracle in its own right, and a freedom in its own way. Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta campaigned for freedom from exploitation for farm workers. They are heroes of humanity, now heralded for being heroes, and their cause was freedom, right? Dalai Lama has a couple of campaigns of freedom, which are his life's work. One of them is freedom from human suffering, which Buddhism talked about quite a bit, and then also, of course, freedom for the Tibetan people from Chinese rule or occupation or whatever you call it. Helen Keller is a story of freedom from physical limitation, from the kinds of limitations that most of us, or certainly I would, crumble underneath and despair much more than hope, and give up much more than try. Freedom from physical limitation, modeling that, demonstrating the capacity of a person. Newton, Galileo, Einstein, Darwin, Watson and Crick, people who gave us freedom from, some would say superstition, some would say just ignorance, some would say just from a lack of understanding, from darkness. In other words, providing information, knowledge, understanding of the universe. Freedom from not understanding. It is a real freedom. If you think about what education does, it liberates us, frees us for all kinds of possibilities. So those scientists were in the pursuit day to day of mental exercises of understanding problems that are so big I can't even begin to understand. But really, they were offering freedom to us in a very real way. Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, freedom from oppression, freedom for human rights, freedom from occupation, freedom from apartheid. A quote from Nelson Mandela, "I had no epiphany or no singular revelation, no moment of truth, just a steady accumulation of 1,000 indignities, 1,000 unremembered moments. There was no particular day on which I said, from here on forward, I will devote myself to the liberation of my people. Instead, I simply found myself doing so and could not do otherwise." And the list goes on, obviously, of people who have fought for yours and my freedom in one level or another, one way or another. And it reminded me of this song of mine. What kind of world do I want to see? What kind of world do I want to leave to my children's children? Now is the time to make up my mind. Yeah. What kind of world is this gonna be? What kind of world will be our legacy to the generations for all humankind? Time to decide what kind of world. Will it be peaceful? Well, am I? Will it be joyful and kind? Will it be all those things a child so easily Oh yeah. Will everybody have enough? Will we speak in the language of love? Somehow I'm suspecting it's all up to what you and I decide. What kind of world do we want to have? When will we be ready to start being that for this precious place? For every young face, tell every boy and girl what kind of world. Will it be peaceful? Well, am I? Will it be joyful and kind? Will it be all those things a child so easily describes? Oh yeah. Will everybody have enough? Will we speak in the language of love? Somehow I'm suspecting it depends on what you and I decide. What kind of world do we want to have? When will we be ready to start giving back to this precious place? To every young face, tell every boy and girl what kind of world. Oh, 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 tell every boy and girl, yeah. What kind of world? Da, 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 da. Whoa, da, 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 da. Three areas. Now, I am a child of, I mentioned before, a child of two lawyers, but one of those lawyers is a constitutional law professor. So for me, I had to go in a couple of directions that I went today with this. But there are three areas that I came up with in which we have a real freedom to choose as human beings and certainly as Americans today. One of those freedoms, and by the way, these sound very simple freedoms, until you go somewhere where they're not. And I wanted to discuss them real briefly and mostly give you a few examples of I don't know if we'll call it heroism, but certainly something special. Political freedom is the first one that came to mind. In this country, we can publicize our opinions on virtually anything. We can openly criticize our leaders. We can run for office, any office. Very, very minimal requirements for running for office. Our elections are observed and, as far as we can tell, fair and free. We can speak our opinions. Now, I say that without cynicism. As far as we can tell, and in contrast to a lot of elections all over the world, a vote counts as a vote. I just watched this documentary. Some of you may have seen it or flipped past it on cable. I think it was called The Youngest Candidate. It was about 18 and 19-year-olds running for office. And at the end, one of them looks in the camera and says, and he didn't win. And he looks and he was running for councilman. And he says, "I may not have won, but I hope some kids who were watching me were awakened to the fact that when they turn 18 in this country, they are given an amazing gift, the right to choose their leaders." You know, very simple, but a real freedom that we share. Some of you have heard the story of a man who is colloquially called the Barefoot Lawyer. Have you heard of this man from China? You've heard his story recently. Chen Guangcheng. I don't know how you pronounce his name. He was born in 1971, which, by the way, is a little remarkable for me because it means he's younger than me. It's a little depressing. In 2005, now this is a self-taught lawyer who was blind from an early age, right? He's called the Barefoot Lawyer because he walked the countryside in China, rural China, and advocated for the legal rights of people who had none. And in the process, you might imagine, in China, has picked a lot of fights. In 2005, he organized a class action lawsuit against a city in China that had viciously been enforcing the one-child rule with mandatory forced abortions. And for doing that in 2005, he was put in prison and beaten terribly along with his wife. He was released and then rearrested, put under house arrest, and this is the part of the story where I was awakened to his existence, was in April, this year, April. He escaped from house arrest and made his way to the US Embassy, where after several days of China complaining about its rights being violated, they, being the Communist government of China, agreed to allow him, Chen, to come to the United States and study. And he refused to without his wife and kids. And then his wife and kids were allowed to come. So he is now actually, believe it or not, a student at the New York University of Law. And just recently, just like in the last couple weeks, arrived in the United States. But the Barefoot Lawyer, about the freedom to have political rights in China, and has had a terrible, terrible time of it. I can't imagine will be quiet about what he knows and what he believes so strongly. This one is a new territory for me. I'm quoting this story because it's an article written by my father in 1991. I haven't told him I'm quoting him. My dad is a professor, and he's been studying and opining about constitutional decisions by federal courts. He actually teaches federal judges about constitutional law as a part of their training when they're nominated. It's pretty cool. And I've met several Supreme Court justices because they sometimes come to the conferences where new federal judges go to learn federal law, right? Because they're appointed, and then they have to learn, a lot. So he is an expert, and I'm proud of him. Obviously, he's an expert on constitutional law. He wrote an article. This one was published in the Indiana University Law Journal. And it's called "The Sacred Flag." And this is another one of our political freedoms. At the 1984, I'm quoting my dad here, at the 1984 Republican National Convention in Dallas, Texas, Gregory Lee Johnson burned an American flag. While the flag was burning, he and other protesters chanted, "America, the red, white, and blue, we spit on you." He was arrested and convicted for violating a Texas statute prohibiting the desecration of a venerated object. Well, that case went all the way to the Supreme Court. The three justices, Rehnquist, Andrew Day O'Connor, and Whizzer White, who I actually met, these are now former justices, just 20 years ago. Three justices wrote about the unique position of the American flag as the symbol of our, I'm quoting, as the symbol of our nation. It has a uniqueness that justifies a governmental prohibition against flag burning. This is Justice Rehnquist wrote an opinion that recounted the history of the American flag and the flag's relation to the founding of the United States and its symbolic value in circumstances where many have lost their lives. And he noted that millions of Americans regard the flag with mystical reverence. He quoted Emerson, he quoted the national anthem, and he quoted other patriotic poetry in his opinion, in his defense of the American flag, and argued that burning the American flag is essentially uttering fighting words. Freedom of speech is limited, actually. You don't have the right to yell fighting words, or the classic example is you don't have unlimited right to yell fire in a crowded theater. If you ever hear a professor talk about constitutional law, they'll use that phrase. You don't have the freedom of speech to yell fire in a crowded theater. And Rehnquist's opinion, and these three justices' opinion, was that that burning a flag was the equivalent of picking a fight in a way that could be done in other ways, without being so inflammatory. However, those three justices lost. And the decision was actually 5-4. And several of the justices actually commented in their opinion in favor of this man's right to burn flag, that they had a hard time ruling in favor of him because they found his behavior so despicable. However, Justice Brennan concluded We do not consecrate the flag by punishing its desecration. Follow that? We do not consecrate the flag by punishing those who destroy the flag. In doing so, we dilute the freedom that the flag represents. Justice Kennedy stressed the difficulty of concurring in a decision so distasteful to him. But he determined also that the First Amendment dictated the court's conclusion, even though he agreed that the flag holds a lonely place of honor in an age when absolutes are so distrusted. So, the right to burn the flag on the steps of the Capitol building, that is a political freedom. Would I ever do it? No. How would I feel about seeing someone do it? Probably the way these justices felt. But freedom is freedom. Another second form of freedom, so that's political. Second form of freedom is personal freedom. We can own for ourselves what we feel, what we think. We can decide for ourselves what is acceptable and what is not. We can declare what we deserve and what we don't, what we receive and what we don't, what we stand for and what we don't. Another amazing person, a woman named Manal Sharif. She graduated from King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia with a Bachelor of Science in Computing. She has worked as an internet security consultant for the Saudi Arabian National Oil Company until May of 2012, when she was arrested while driving around her home city. She hadn't broken the speed limit or run a red light. I'm quoting here from a magazine called The Week, some of you may know. She was guilty of being a woman who drove, a crime in Saudi Arabia. After 9 days in jail, she emerged to worldwide fame. A film of her protest cruise, shot by a friend sitting next to her while she was driving, went viral on YouTube. They tried to squash it, by the way. They tried to delete YouTube and delete the tweet, and somebody had copied it and posted it again. And millions upon millions of people watched her drive around her home city in Saudi Arabia. The video and her subsequent campaign for women's rights led to a barrage of death threats. The harsher the attack, she says, the better I am doing. You know what, she says? They messed with the wrong woman. She says her life changed in 2009 when she came to Boston for work. For the first time, quote, I could live a normal life. I could look at apartments and sign a contract without a man's approval. Most important, she said, I could drive a car, and I thought, this is how life should be. And another amazing story of someone declaring who they are, owning their own freedom to be themselves. A man named Joel Burns, some of you may have heard this story. He is an elected official on the city council in Fort Worth, Texas. And when there was a spate of teenagers and younger killing themselves because they were outed as gay and ridiculed and bullied as gay. Well, one day at a normal Fort Worth, Texas City Council meeting, he took the microphone and he read this as best he could through his tears. When I was 13, this is heavily edited, and if you want to read something that will bring you to tears, I promise you, or just watch the video of it. When I was 13, I was a skinny, lanky, awkward teen who had grown too tall, too fast, who was stumbling on his own feet. I was the son of a Methodist church pianist named Jeanette and a cowboy named Finley Butch. As their son and as a kid in a small town, there was a certain image of who I thought I was supposed to be, and as I entered adolescence, I started having feelings that I didn't understand and couldn't explain. And I knew they didn't mesh with the image of what I thought I was supposed to be. I was a sensitive kid, but friendly. I was a band dork. So was I. I played basketball, but not very well. So was that. I was teased like all kids, but I was fairly confident, and I didn't let it bother me much. When I was in the 9th grade, just starting Crowley High School, I was cornered after school by some older kids who roughed me up. They said I was a faggot and that I should die and go to hell where I belonged. That erupted the fear that I had kept. Sorry, I'm trying to turn find pages with only one hand. That erupted the fear that I had kept, sorry about the language, by the way, that I had kept this down, that what I was beginning to feel on the inside would somehow be showing on the outside. Ashamed, humiliated, and confused, I went home. There must be something very wrong with me, I thought. I have never told this story before tonight to anyone, he said into the microphone in Fort Worth. My family, my husband, not anyone. But the number of suicides in recent days has upset me so much, and it tears my heart. And even though there may be political repercussions for telling my story, the story is not just for the adults who might choose or not choose to support me. The story is for the young people who might be holding a gun tonight, or a rope, or a bottle of pills. You need to know that the story doesn't end on that unfortunate day. There is so much more. Yes, high school was difficult. Coming out was painful, but life gets so much better. I would take the 13-year-old in me to the first day of spring in 1999 when I won my first election, right? He goes on to say, to those who are feeling very alone tonight, please know that I understand how you feel. Things will get easier. Stick around to make those memories for yourself. It may not seem like it tonight, but they will get better. Attitudes of society will change. Live long enough to be there to see it. Yeah. Freedom. It isn't like I've always wondered what I was made of. Is this really me? I've only recently discovered I've always stood in the shadows of expectations of me. Well, now that I see there's no judge, there's no jury. Now that I know I can take my own road, I feel a freedom that I have never known. It's about unbecoming what I never was. It's about unlearning what was never true. It's about unbelieving all the lies that I've been told. Unbecoming is the story of my soul. Everybody's name is given. Nobody asks us who we really are. But after so many years of living, you wouldn't think the answer would still feel so far. I'm slow, I'm smart, I'm accounting, I'm art, I'm left brain or right, I'm a morning person or night. Well, maybe it's time to step outside those lines and see who I find. 'Cause it's about unbecoming what I never was. It's about unlearning what was never true. It's about unbelieving all the lies that I've been told. Unbecoming is the story of my soul. The scariest thing is offending, disappointing everyone's vision of who I should be. But the only way me what I never was. It's about unlearning what was never true. It's about unbelieving all the lies that I've been told. Unbecoming is the story of my soul. Unbecoming is coming home. The third form of freedom, which is so cherished and guarded that I couldn't help but mention, is freedom of religion in America. 76% of Americans, these numbers are all fudgy, but a poll a few years ago, 76% of Americans identify themselves as Christian, including about a third of those Catholic. 14% are agnostic, atheist, humanist, secularist, or common ground members. Did I say that out loud? 1 to 2% Jewish, 1 to 2% Muslim. By the way, that's the fastest growing religion in the United States, is Islam. And then less than 1%, significantly less than 1% for Hindu, Unitarian, Pagan, Wiccan, Druid. Dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of religions represented in the United States. And lest you think that religious freedom is a given, this is a story some of you heard on one of my Wednesday nights, but it just begged to be repeated real briefly, about freedom. Teresa McBain, 44, was raised a conservative Southern Baptist. Her dad was a pastor, and she felt the call of God when she was 6. Did you feel the call of God? I felt the call of Pop-Tarts, I think. Call of Wonder Twin Powers Activate when I was 6. You guys know what that is? Yeah. Yeah, that was a cartoon. Anyway, she had questions about conflicts in the Bible or the role of women, but she always felt like she was serving God, right? For years, she set her concerns aside, but when she became a Methodist pastor 9 years ago, she started asking sharper questions and said she thought they would make her faith stronger. And in reality, I found so many holes in my religion. The questions haunted her. Is Jesus the only way to God, really? Would a loving God really torment people for eternity? This is her talking, not me, right? If you believe these things, that's great. That's fine. That's America. Is there any evidence of God at all? And one day she crossed a line. I just kind of realized in a eureka moment, I am an atheist. About a year ago, Teresa McBain found the Clergy Project, an anonymous online community of clergy who have realized they are atheists. You can imagine, it's funny, but it's not. She began applying for other jobs. But when prospective employers asked why she wanted to leave ministry, she did not know what to say. What the hell am I supposed to do, she asked in a journal to herself. The options are work at something like Starbucks or McDonald's, and even there, they're going to ask questions. I could clean houses and not make a great amount of money. At least nobody there would be asking me questions. Driving to church on Sunday, March 18th, this year, she realized she could no longer bear her double life. I have got to come out, she says. I have got to get out of it. It used to terrify me what people's reaction would be. It's been so long now, and I've done this for so long, I don't even care. The sermon she gave that day was her last. Then she went to the American Atheists Convention after that sermon. She didn't tell her congregation it was her last sermon. She went to American Atheist Convention and got up on stage. Said, my name is Teresa. I am a pastor currently serving a Methodist church, at least up to this point, and I am an atheist. Hundreds of people jumped to their feet. They clapped for more than a minute. She said, quote, on stage, I was the one on the right track and you were the ones who were going to burn in hell. I'm happy to say as I stand before you right now, I'm going to burn with you. 2 days later, she went back to Tallahassee, to Florida. Quote, I didn't know how far or how explosive her coming out would be, said her husband, Ray. The next morning we got up, I went to work, and my son called. and said, "Mom's video went viral." The local TV station ran a series of stories about her, interviewing her boss, her congregants, and not her. Hundreds of people wrote comments on the site, and they were painful to read. Quote, "The majority of them were pretty hateful," she said. She tried to see the church's district superintendent, but he canceled the meeting. She was locked out of her church. "I don't want to go home," she wrote in her journal the next day. "I don't want to have to be in Publix or Walmart and see who's going to corner me and tell me off." She did go home, though. People shunned her, job interviews were canceled. Only 2 of her friends called to remain in touch. Her husband said, quote, "I believe in God, and to be honest, I pray for her every night. I have friends praying for her," he said. "But I spent 23 years in the Army, and I am a police officer. We have freedom of speech and freedom of thought in this country. God never forced anybody to believe. Who am I to?" Yeah. A minister, it can be a very lonely job. And I can't imagine it getting lonelier than when you have that kind of declaration to make. Let me sing you one more song, and then I'll close a little bit. I'm going late. It's too late. We're okay? Okay. So we have freedom of religion, personal freedom to be who you are, and political freedom, right? And this is a song I'd have to sing today, and then I'll close. So I have a few. Are you okay with a few more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, everybody's fine. Okay. Oh, almost everybody's fine. And if you're not, you're not telling me. So that's very nice. Even this song, I can't imagine that I imagine that there are many countries in which I could not sing this song. This is a country where I uniquely can. I'll sing a slightly abbreviated version, so everybody can have their barbecues. That's not really today's. There's one power, invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power indescribable, and just speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth. As simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem, or Heaven's Door. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign, it's the universe. It's music, Mother Earth, or Father Time. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. It's the power of the love in you and me. One power. One power, one power. It's the moment of creation. It's an everlasting peace. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the birthright of all nations. It's the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon, for it's love that's most deep. It's one power. lives forever in you and me. It's the power of the love in you and me. Now there is a fourth freedom that I want to close with. Not political, not personal, not religious. Maybe all of them in some sense, but I'll call it spiritual freedom. And that's very much what, I guess really what a song like One Power is about. Very much what a place like Common Ground is about. I've sung for most of the world's religions over the last 12 years. That song actually, One Power, has been banned. I've been told not to sing it in some places. And that's perfectly valid, because that is not a neutral song. It seems like a neutral song, but it's not actually a neutral song. It's taking its own side. And that also is the beauty of this country and of religious freedom. But spiritual freedom is another level. And I'm going to close with that and then sing one song that I want to close with everybody singing with me if you're interested. But spiritual freedom is the freedom to decide for yourself, to respond with love, to accept what is true, to act with kindness, to forgive with an open heart, to connect with life, to enjoy every day, to take a leap of faith. Spiritual freedom, these are choices that we have every single day, every relationship we have, every profession we are in, every prayer that we say or don't say, every song that we sing or don't sing, everything we begin, everything we end, every headline we read, every up and down of the stock market, every purchase we make. These are spiritual choices that we make every day. And that is a freedom I'm not sure you needed a Nelson Mandela or a Gandhi or Dr. King to step in and fight for. And Nelson Mandela himself said that the greatest prison he ever found was in his own mind. After all those years in a prison cell, his own mind was the greatest prison of all. So spiritual freedom is a freedom that no one can take away. That's not in a constitution or in a courtroom. It's not in my father's article, and it's not in a Saudi Arabian police station. Spiritual freedom is a beautiful and amazing privilege. It's the privilege really of just being alive. If I was to leave you with anything about all this, it's that so many forget these freedoms, so many are robbed of these freedoms, so many are prevented from experiencing them. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom to come out gay, freedom to drive. So as I started with, the opportunity in a couple of days on July 4th is to take 10 extra seconds just to feel grateful. Even if you don't decide on that day to express or dabble in a new freedom, and that's a whole nother level of fun, right? Write a letter to your newspaper complaining about a politician, or speaking truth. I just did that a couple weeks ago actually to National Geographic. They showed a picture of something that looked like a terrible mistreatment of an animal by a scientist. And I wrote a letter. I felt really good writing that letter. And I thought, I doubt they'll print it. They'd probably get thousands of letters. But if they printed it, it would be more eyeballs on that one letter than I've reached in 12 years of singing for 1 million people. I felt powerful. Some of you know Karen Drucker. She's a very talented singer-songwriter. She just told me a story the other day about how she called her local council people, I should say, in her town, and told them that there was a two-way street, but it looked like a one-way. It was a one-way street, but it looked like a two-way street, and people were continuously turning the wrong way, and it needed a sign that said, "One way, do not enter." And she said she was driving, and months went by, and then just a couple weeks ago, she was driving by that intersection, and her husband started applauding her. She said, "What are you applauding?" He said, "Look," and the sign was up, right? We have spectacular privileges and rights and power in this country. That was my wedding ring, which I play with all the time. Religious freedom, join or unjoin, believe or don't believe, Reevaluate the things that you say or sing or pray or read. Ask yourself, is this my belief or is this what I'm being told to believe, what I'm supposed to believe, right? Personal freedom. Make a change in your personal life that's been haunting you to make, that strikes fear in your heart for making, that would rattle some cages. I read you half a dozen examples of people who rattled some serious cages with courage and conviction and a determination to be free. We all have that freedom at any moment on every level. We have that freedom, especially in this amazing country. So for about 10 years while my bubby, grandmother, was in a nursing home, my grandparents passed the Statue of Liberty on the way into this country. I imagine many of you did, or certainly some of your ancestors did. My bubby and Zadie, actually both sides, floated past the Statue of Liberty on their way to Ellis Island as they entered this country. And I am a testament to the opportunity that they were provided and that they created for their kids, as are all of us, really, testament to what this country provides as opportunity, if nothing else, just an opportunity and a freedom to be that. So for about 10 years while my bubby was going from age 88 to 98, she passed away just a couple years ago, I would visit, whenever I visited Chicago, I would sing in her nursing home. It's a Jewish nursing home, and my bubby always wanted to hear Fiddler on the Roof, which I'm not going to sing for you. I had a running joke with her because I hated the songs, but I always sang them for my bubby. It was the only time I ever sang them. These crappy, crappy songs over and over again. I would sing them for my bubby. It was as if no other songs existed in the world, just Fiddler on the Roof. However, this song, whenever I was there around my birthday, around in July, I would always sing an American patriotic song, and bless their hearts, these people in their 80s and 90s would always stand if they could. I'm not asking you to stand, but they would stand, they would sing, and they would feel it, and you could feel a reminiscence happening, a recognition. To come from the towns and the lacks of freedom that so many of us come, and our ancestors come from, to come from there to this place, and then sing a simple song like this, written by an immigrant. A Jewish immigrant, in fact. It's really special. So I want to sing this for you and with you if you're interested in singing with me, and thank you for having me. One thing I want to mention, I'm so proud of myself for remembering. I have an event in 1 month, August 4th. It's called a Sacred Summer Day. Some of you came last year. I'm doing the second annual. It's a one-day retreat. Music, discussion, silence, garden, nice lunch, nice people, nice company. If you're interested in coming, I have just a few spaces left. It's like exactly 1 month from now, August 4th, Saturday. Just come to the table and ask me about it. I have flyers, and like I said, just a few spaces left. But you're most definitely invited. I love this community, so I'd love to have some familiar faces from here come. So here we go, one more song. Not in honor of my bubby, but certainly in memory of her. God